product managers, marketers, data analysts, CEOs of startups, and pretty much everyone who's data driven and wants to build and grow organically their presence and so on. This is going to be probably like 20% presentation and 80% hands-on experience. So I'll start by the agenda. So I'm going to introduce the product overview, key features for the folks here on the call who've never used it, and then I'll go to talk about the basics, which probably all of you are familiar with, which are event setup, SDKs, Facebook Pixel, and so on, and then go on to the behavior and activity of users, and mostly talking about user segmentations, creating funnels, how can you measure retention across different devices, different channels, and then we go to the exciting part, which is marketing related, and that has to do with lifetime value of customers, and then audience creation based on segments. And then we'll move ahead with talking about omnichannel. Actually, we'll probably start with talking about omnichannel. So we'll tackle some new concepts, notably ESGs, which are short for event source groups, overlap diagrams, and cross-platform funnels. Then we'll briefly discuss some new upcoming product developments that we're working on and where we need your feedback, and then short Q&A. Cool. I think this whole thing should last 45 minutes, so I'll make it brief. So this is the main dashboard of Facebook Analytics. We launched the product, I think, 2 and a half years ago, and at the beginning it was mostly focused on app data. So that's really App SDK. It was so mostly focused on app data and how marketers track app installs and so on. So it was a very, very niche product, but then we started building on top of it about and adding more features, and currently, as we will see, it's no longer just for apps. It is for apps, for pixels, for offline events, for your page data, and so on. So we'll go through the main features of Facebook Analytics. Currently, more than 1 million apps, websites, and bots are using it, and this number is probably deprecated now. It's around 1.5. So, as I said a minute ago, Facebook Analytics now is for web, for mobile, for messenger bots, for pages, and even in-store data. So think about it as from an omnichannel perspective. So it's a tool that helps you understand the entire user journey. So basically what we do, we have, across Facebook properties, we have 2 billion active people, and we just build a graph on top of these people, and we have possibility to talk about data in perspective of people. So we are not tracking devices, we're not tracking cookies, we're tracking people. So this means for you that you can analyze how people use the product, how people use your product or website or service across different channels, whether they are logged in or not. So the typical use cases are how many users will view my posts or comment on my Facebook post, and then go on to view the website and install the app and then make a purchase in the store. So this is the kind of insight that you can derive from Facebook Analytics now. The second aspect, aside from omnichannel, it's a tool that helps you analyze demographics. So we provide very, very rich demographics data, including, as you can see here, age and gender, which are accurate based on Facebook profiles, household incomes, countries, languages, education level, even relationship status, and so on and so forth. Obviously, all this data is aggregated. So we aggregate and anonymize demographic data about your audience, and this is pretty unique. So when you track an event with Facebook Analytics, you automatically get the demographics data and location and more out of the box. And then you can use this data and segmentation through the product, which we'll get to. The second thing is, as I said, it supports all channels. Pretty much every channel that your users are interacting with you on are supported by Facebook Analytics. The third point is provides cross-platform insights. So we're no longer providing individual insights about your app performance, like Android performance, iOS performance, web performance, and so on. You can, if you're an e-commerce site, you can, for example, have lifetime value of customers across all channels. And then it's integrated with Facebook ads tools. And this is something that, as we'll see in the product roadmap, this is something that we're heavily invested in. So it's integrated in the way that you can look at the value of your marketing campaigns beyond the cost per install, and you can leverage the product data to create new audiences. And lastly, it's free to use. So just keep in mind that this is not just for Facebook Insights, and does not require Facebook login. Sometimes users confuse Facebook Analytics and they think that users need to have Facebook login and so on in order to be tracked. That's not correct. So some of the things that are included and that we're going to talk about, event segments, funnels, cohort analysis, creating audiences, and so on and so forth. So it's a very, very full-fledged analytics tool that's currently being developed and coupled with behavioral analysis, and that way you can get the edge. So let's start with talking about omnichannel. So the idea behind omnichannel is how can you understand and obviously optimize the user journey across all of your properties. So for web, if you have a website, you track your users either through the Facebook Pixel or the JavaScript SDK. If you have a mobile app, that's done through the Facebook SDK. If you have a messenger bot, that is usually through automated tracking plus a server-to-server API. For page data, that is completely automatic. So I'll double-click on page data. You can actually access page data on Facebook Analytics, and we track by default five events. So the first one we track post reactions, and you can break down obviously these reactions by type, like love, like, and so on. We track comments and post shares and page messages. And these are the events that we track by default. We don't track, for example, how many people like your page. So we only account for active users, the people who are interacting meaningfully with your page. So to build this omnichannel entity, there is this thing called event source groups, and basically it kind of looks like this. So you go to your analytics dashboard, and you just click on the chevron, new event source group, and then you select the business manager, and you create the event source group. So I'll actually switch back to business manager and show you this in detail. All right. So let's assume we already have our properties set up. We have our Facebook page, we have our pixel, and we have our app data here. By the way, I forgot to mention, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the tool, and I'll get to that as fast as I can. So through Business Manager, I'll just go click on Business Settings here, and this, if we assume that I am the admin of Business Manager, this will give me access to all the properties that I have. So notably, we have the pages data here. We have apps, we have the pixels, and that's it. We might have offline events, but yeah. So briefly, I'm not going to get into this in detail, but you can actually access, for example, your pixel data by itself through Facebook Analytics just by going to pixel and then click on View Analytics. And that will obviously open Facebook Analytics for your pixel data. Same thing for apps. You can just view analytics for one app, and you can view analytics for one page. But the interesting part is what I was saying, the omnichannel experience is what you can create through here. So if you scroll down to events or groups, I'm just going to delete this one. So yeah, by default the screen is blank, and yeah, it just shows a simple welcome message group, all your events, but like pixels, apps, offline, and so on. So I'll just go ahead and click on add. I'll just give this event source group a name, just call it my company, ESG. I will select an app, and I'll select the pixel, and I will select the page data. There is a question about if we can, if I'm going to share or email this deck presentation to you, and the answer is yes. So you can just contact your Facebook point of contact, and he can share this post the session. There is another question around implementing events in hybrid apps. I'll get to that when I'll start talking about event implementation. So once you have you select your apps and your pixels and pages, you can just go ahead and create the group. It's worth noting that usually for some companies they have different pixels for different properties. Let's say you have mycompany.com and you have a site for France and a site for Spain and a site for Belgium and so on, and for each one you have a pixel. So through this event source group, you can actually create different pixels for and have pretty much map all your data in one place. Same thing for app data. If you are split between an Android app and iOS app, and you have two app IDs and you don't know which, like it's kind of confusing to track everything in one place, you can just actually leverage the event source group for this, and you just select the first app and then the second app. Same thing for page and so on. Great. So I'll go ahead and create the event source group, and that's it. So whenever I want to get back to this ESG, I can just drag it and bookmark it here, or just go to Business Manager and view it. I can also assign people in my company to access this event source group. So I can just add people who need to access this ESG, because as I said, by default, this view by itself is inaccessible for everyone except the admins, and you can obviously recognize an admin by having this shield here. There is a question about analytics for all pages. It's actually Facebook Analytics is available for all pages. So yeah, once we create the event source group, just go to View Analytics, and that will open Facebook Analytics for that event source group. Obviously, this event source group is not pushing any events. I'll get to a demo one that has everything. So this is the creation flow. Let's see demo event source group. So once you create your ESG, and assuming all the events are being pushed, this is the dashboard that you're greeted with. You have your key metrics, app installs, new users, revenue, sessions, and so on. And as I said in the beginning, all this data is actually aggregated and combined between all your channels. So if I'm using your your service on my phone and on web, usually on other analytics tools, you can see two devices or two users. For Facebook Analytics, you'll see one user. So these are unique users across channels, and you can view here the channels that we have access to. So here, 59.5% are on web. You have the Facebook page, offline events, Android, and iOS. Cool. So I'll go back to the presentation. I'll check if there are any questions. Can you share the demo analytics link? Yeah, you can actually access it from facebook.com/analytics or analytics.facebook.com. If you grant access to a user for an event source group, do they automatically receive access to the page, ad account, app in the group, or is that a separate access? So basically, when you grant access to people in ESG, what they would have access to is everything in here. So they can obviously access your revenue data, your session data, and all of your all the data that's being combined in the event source group. But they're not going to have access to, let's say, the Facebook page or the ad account or and so on. Another question, what's the best way to monitor apps user behavior purchase through multiple ad campaigns in various triggers? I'll answer this when I'll start talking about segments. All right. So going back to my presentation. Yes. So events. So events obviously are the backbone of Facebook Analytics and obviously all the other analytics products. So these are actions that people take. So by default, we have a bunch of default events that we track, and you can implement, and I'll get to that in a second. But think about app launch, registration, sharing, added to wish list, and so on. So obviously, I mentioned this, talked about this earlier, but double-clicking on it. Login event on web it's either through the Facebook Pixel or a JavaScript SDK. The two are kind of similar actually. The Pixel is the default way or the default marketer way to implement events. The JavaScript SDK allows to push events, but at the same time it has much more capabilities. Like if you are implementing Facebook login or any of our other APIs, the JavaScript SDK is the way to go. Mobile, that's obvious. On Messenger, that's obvious. Pages, and then you have for offline data, there is the offline conversion API. So if you want to access, for example, your app data, you just go to facebook.com/analytics/app ID. Same thing for Pixel ID, like just /analytics/the Pixel ID, and same thing for page ID. For the page data, there is this process that we call data ingestion, and it only starts from the moment, well, not for all pages, but for most pages, the process starts when you first visit the page. So it's very likely if you go to facebook.com/analytics/your page ID, it's very likely that you won't find any data there, and you'll see a screen saying your data is being prepared now. What that means is, starting from that moment, we'll start tracking page data. So instead of this, I'll just go to the dashboard and show you a couple of quick things. So there is this thing that usually people want, which is event debugging. So event debugging for Pixel or for App ID or for the Facebook apps and so on, it's not trivial. And there are two ways to do it. So the first one is you can actually just go to, let's say, let's say I go to the test app. So if you go to your app or your Pixel dashboard, you can just go to event debugging on the left. And that will show you events in almost real time. So for events, you can sort them by type of event. Like if you want only app installs, you just look at app installs by time logged and device and so on. If there are any values or parameters passed, you can look at that bit here. Another cool thing is this is now disabled because I'm looking at dummy data. But if you're looking at real data, you can actually sort by either all events or just my events. which means that you can actually go to your app or service and do a couple of actions there and come back here and select reduce this to only your events and check what events have been pushed. Another way to track to debug events is simply if you go to the events tab. So here you see the event type. So we have two types, standard and custom. Standard are Facebook standard events that you can use for retargeting purposes. Custom events are events that you can create yourself. So you have up to 1,000 events that you can create, 1,000 custom events, plus up to 15 different parameters per event. The second column is the event name. And then you have the event count. This is how many times the event has been triggered in the last 28 days. You have month over month change, and this counts what's the differential between this month or this period versus the previous month. Today's count, how many times this event has been fired today, and how many people have fired this event. If we're talking about, for example, a purchase event, there is a value associated to it, and you can just check the value here. If you are interested in, for example, let's say I want to break down purchases by some dimension. So I'll just go to purchases here. I care about, well, metric. There is revenue, average, and yeah, let's say we care about revenue, daily interval, daily, and then this is the graph that shows purchase by day. If I want to break it down by, let's say, age, I can do that. So I'll just have a breakdown by age. In this case, 25 to 34 are make up the most purchases. And when we talk about omnichannel, we can break down by channel here. So once you break down by channel, you can see that, for example, here web is much more relevant than other channels. So to summarize, you can show by event information, and these are some parameters that we automatically pass in. Or you can break down by user properties. So user properties are properties that you can pass as special parameters with your data. Notice that we also track. Well, we actually started tracking UTM parameters a couple months ago, and now we can track by content, medium, name, and source. So if I want to break down by UTM source, I can do this here. When it comes to campaigns, you can break down by campaign, by ad set, but we are not passing this in the demo dashboard. So if you have app installed campaigns, you can obviously access this through this dropdown. All right. Aggregate demographics. We just discuss like this. Yeah, you can. So I'll get to the segments parts in a bit, but just so you know, you can actually compare two events or two segments for the same event. Another feature, so I call this power feature, is breaking down events by different dimensions, and this allows for multi-dimensional analysis. So if I go back here, I can create a breakdown. Let's say I want to break down purchases by maybe country. Just call it purchase by country. I'll start by selecting the event purchase, and then I'll select the parameter country. So notice that I can break down up to 3 dimensions. Right. So the result is a table that contains the purchase event, its values, and countries. You can also do purchase by country by, let's say, age. And then we have this. So obviously it gets bigger as you add different dimensions. The good part is you can actually export this to CSV and just use it in Excel to create graphs or what have you. Because sometimes there are some insights that you cannot get from any other tool, like including Facebook Analytics, and it needs a spreadsheet. All right, and then there are the predefined events, and I'm pretty sure everyone here is familiar with this. So you have app launch, add payment info, add to cart, and so on and so forth. And yeah, this is really well documented in our help centers and so on. Last thing that I didn't talk about is the export API. So we actually have an export API. Aside from what I've just shown you in breakdowns and exporting a CSV, we have a proper export API which allows you to export your event data and store backup if you want. The catch is you can only export data that you have passed to Facebook Analytics or to us, which means that you cannot export demographics data, for example. So segments. Segments is probably the most powerful feature in the whole product, and think of segments are filters. So first one here, first example is male users aged 18 to 24 who have purchased on iOS, or female users in the US who were acquired via Facebook ads. And the way to create a segment I can obviously access here all the predefined segments, but I can just click on plus, create new segment. So the first one was age 18 to 24 who have purchased on iOS. So I'll just go add create a new condition, and condition has to do with demographics. The first one, demographics age, and value is 18 to 24. So this constitutes 37.87% of our audience. And again, in the last 28 days, we can go as far as we want. Obviously, if you want this to be your segment, you can just apply and look at the data from this segment's perspective. But we're interested in these users who've made a purchase on iOS. So I'm interested in event, include purchase. So I can add different parameters. And another condition which has to do with device info. So device OS is any of, let's say, iOS for now. And this is a 4% segment. So if I want to understand more about this segment of users, I can just break this down or create this segment and look at the data from their perspective. Revenue, retention, like everything here pretty much trickles down to this segment. Same thing if we want female users in the US who were acquired via Facebook ad. Again, like we can only track currently app installs. So you can just do app install source is Facebook ad. Obviously you have Instagram ads and different attribution models. And then, yeah, so demographics, gender, female. this is as far as segments go. There are, I mean, segments are super. They are either super easy or super complicated. Depends on what you want to achieve. If you are adventurous, there is this feature here. It's called percentiles, and think of it as like if you choose. Let me move this. If I want to create a percentile of purchases, for example, and I want to get only the top 5% of people who are the most valuable, or I can choose top 5% of users who did the action the most often. So let's say top 5% most often. Again, keep in mind that this is only last 28 days. So for this percentile analysis, typically we go as far as we want. So this is a segment of 1.77%, and you can, well, typically these are the super high lifetime value users, and you can understand who these users are. I'll skip actually. I'm going to talk about this afterwards, but after you create this segment, you can just save it and create custom audience based on this segment. So typically, if you are targeting your highest performing or highest value customers, it makes perfect sense to extract this audience from Facebook Analytics. You can also create lookalike audiences of these high value customers. There are a couple of questions here. Okay. So first one is how does the system aggregate unique users when users are not logged in? Is it cookie based then? So no, it is not cookie based. I mean, like we have different signals. It's the same that we use for ad retargeting and so on. But if you are a Facebook user on desktop and a Facebook user on mobile, we can automatically do the anonymous aggregation on the background and identify that it's the same user. How can we use standard events such as comments, shares to be used as a retargeting audience? Actually, it's the same here. Like I'll just go to event, include post comments, and let's say event count greater than 10. So these are the users who've made more than 10 comments in the last 28 days, and I can create a custom audience based on this. Obviously, I can choose people who like made more than 10 comments and event exclude app launch, let's say. So these are super engaged customers, but they haven't launched the app. So we might actually target them with either engagement campaign for mobile apps or an app install campaign. Is Instagram ads data tracked via Facebook Analytics as well? Yes, that is correct. That is correct in the case if we're talking about app install ads. If we're talking about web ads or any kind of other ads, you can do that through UTM parameters. So you can just go for web parameters and UTM content or medium or source depending on what you want. Obviously, that's something that's very hyper focused for us currently. Is how can we actually integrate all the campaign data and ads data inside Facebook Analytics. Another question, it's still unclear to me if the source of the insights is only FB campaigns organic or other sources as well. So the sources of the insights are everything. When we talk about Facebook Analytics, it tracks everything regardless on the acquisition way. But again, as I said before, you can also track newsletter or Google campaigns or what have you through UTM parameters. Can you export daily events like through Audit? Yes, you can do that. You can just use the export API. Where do you define gender? I didn't get the question. I'm not sure if the question is from a Facebook user perspective or from an advertiser, from a Facebook Analytics user perspective. I see that another question. I see data from Facebook Pixel in Analytics, but I cannot group events with page. It's because I'm not an admin of Facebook Pixel. Yes. Actually, to group events with the page, you need to you need to be admin or at least analyst of page. And you also need to be admin of the business manager. So only admins of the business manager can create event search groups. Can an advertiser share segment through Facebook Analytics to an agency? I'm probably not the right person to answer this. This goes into the ads world, but you can create a custom audience from Facebook Analytics, which you can create to, which you can export to Ads Manager, and then you can assign different users to your custom audience from there. Is there a limit on the segments that can be created? No. As far as I know, there is no limit. I mean, there's probably a limit of like 100,000 or something, but I'm not sure if anyone would do that. Is it possible to accumulate users with the percentile into custom audiences? Yes, that's possible. Yeah, I mean we've seen that and shown here. All right, I'll keep the rest of the questions for later, and I'll go ahead with the rest. The next feature that I want to talk about is funnels. Funnels is probably the most underutilized feature when it comes to data overall, and also the feature that can provide the most value. So let's actually do a typical example of a funnel. Let's go to funnels. And create new funnel. So I want to create a new funnel that would tell me, for example, like what's the conversion rate between someone who likes, let's say, a clear segment. What's the conversion rate between someone who likes my posts on the Facebook page to launches the app? So first step is post reaction. Second step is launches. Apply. So this basically the first event is post reaction. Second event is app launches. It says that the overall conversion rate is 14% and takes on the median of 12 hours to complete. Now, if you hover over one of the +1 phases, you can see the percentile. So top 25% do this action almost after 55 minutes. Top 50% is 12 hours, and then the long tail takes 3 days. I mean, if you want to understand more about the behavior of users who, let's say, launches our app or visit the website after doing certain action on the Facebook page, I can just go to complete funnel. Let's say I'll do, 1 hour. And instead of app launches, I'll do page views for web. So yeah, it takes on average 17 minutes, or it takes on a median of 17 minutes, and this is the default user action for a window of 1 hour. Now, what could be interesting to do is you can break this down by different parameters. So any parameter that you pass back to us, you can break down by. So you can break down by, let's say, age. So here, let's say, so the insight that we can derive from here is the older your users are, the higher conversion is. So imagine like 45 to 54, it's at like almost 75% conversion, and then it goes down 61, 64, well, that's what's in there, 36 and 51. I mean, sometimes these insights make sense, sometimes they don't, but it's up to the analyst to make sense of the funnel. Like, for example, like if we had a purchase event here, let's say, sorry, and I'll just do default. So post-React, like users on average convert at a rate of 24% after they make a reaction on Facebook. Now, like the question that I would get is, okay, so how does this affect, like this funnel? How does this affect my business? The answer is, I mean, like I don't have a valid answer. It depends on if you're a publisher, if you're an e-commerce, and different verticals, but sometimes you can get some really interesting user behavior insights from funnels. For example, here you have, let's say, 3 days median completion time, and this could mean that like your brand was stuck in their head and they thought about making a purchase after 3 days. And if you are investing in ads, you can think about, okay, so this is an interesting insight, and the action would be, let's try to get these users who react to Facebook posts within a 3-day period, so they can convert, because this is the median completion time for conversion. Again, if you are an e-commerce site, you can probably have the first event as the first event would be app install, and then you're interested in purchase. So from app install to purchase, that is 56%. Yeah, we're working with fake data here, so it's not supposed to be 0 seconds. And then after app installs, usually we start adding different events. So I'll just drag this after app installs. Let's say what other events we might have. Content view to purchase. All right. And so this is quite a healthy funnel. Sometimes we find that app launches are way lower than app installs. If it's lower than 98%, that's a red sign, and you need to fix that, which means that your users install your app and they don't launch it. And then from app launch to content view, we have a drop off of 80%, which means that 20%, almost 20%, or 19.4% of users who launch our app, they never view products. If content view is actually for products. And then almost 60% of users who view content end up making a purchase. I mean, this is a fake funnel. In your case, I would assume that to get very valid metrics, you need to have much more events. For example, registration, add to cart, and so on. And for example, like before purchase, you obviously need to have an add to cart, so you can consult the drop off between users who add to cart to purchase. And even before purchase, you can add in payment information, and so on and so forth. Also, if you pass in parameters with events, you can break them down you can break the events by their parameters. So if you're passing, let's say for purchase events, you can pass in credit card provider. It's Visa, MasterCard, whatever. And then you can refine by only provider equals Visa. Same thing for content view. If you're passing any parameters, you can refine by them, app installs, and so on. Here, for example, content view, let's say I want to see users who do this event more than 2 times. So I'll just delete all this. So the content view to purchase conversion is 60%, and let's see how this is affected for users who view more than two items. And now it's 56%. Let's do 5. 61%, and you can just play around with these values to see what's the inflection point after which content view or any other event become redundant. And sometimes you get users who view more than 5 items in an e-commerce site convert much better than users who only view 1 item, and sometimes it is the opposite. You can also, I didn't mention this, but I think it's obvious. You can combine segments with funnel analysis. So you can only break this down by certain segments. For example, here it's Android users, and this is the funnel for these Android users. Cohorts. So instead of cohorts, I'll do actually retention first. So I'll go to, if we go to retention, let's clear the segment. So the retention graph basically shows us how many users we retained after X number of days or weeks. Again, this is for a period of 28 days. I'll just set the time interval to daily. So basically, the TLDR when it comes to cohorts or retention analysis is the darker the color, the better you're doing. So the average here, retention after 28 days is at 31%. On January 16, that's the darker colors, and whatever you were doing on January 16, that's probably at a much higher retention. Sometimes that's a new acquisition source. That's a different campaign. Sometimes that's a news article that you cannot track its attribution, and so on. Same thing for January 25. And whenever the colors are pale, that means that you're not doing good when it comes to retention. So if we're thinking about retention, it basically means how many users we acquired on day 0, and how many of those users had launched the app or interacted with your service after X number of days. So cohorts are actually a different. It's the larger use case. So we might think about retention graphs as a unique use case of cohorts. So if you look here, for cohort analysis, we need to set 2 events. So here it's new user activity, then user activity, which means that this is effectively our retention graph. Like if we look at daily, it needs to be the same as the retention graph. But instead of user activity, we might track actually something different. Usually if you are an e-commerce site or travel site, you're interested in purchase. So this is how many users were new and then made a purchase. And this is how it looks like. So on January 16, 26% of users who were acquired made a purchase, and then it goes down. It's quite stable in this case. As opposed to January 17, and so on. And practically, you can create cohorts for any kind of event you want. And these events can be either cumulative events or cumulative values. So for a purchase, like let's say I'm interested in how much money I make overall or over all that period, and that's how I can look at it. So obviously, this is like, for example, the cohort that started using the app or started using the service or was acquired on January 25th is better performing than these ones, and the better performing ones are January 16, 17, and 18, 19. So again, there is no golden rule of how you want to create cohorts or how you want to analyze this, but you need to experiment with different variations in order to get the correct numbers and the correct user insights. There are probably more questions now. Question of, are there any uses of event source groups beyond just in analytics? I mean, yeah, you can, as we saw, you can create custom audiences based on different event sources. Do you have to be an admin to create event source groups? Yes, that is correct. How do you create and track custom events within Facebook Analytics? So the creation part is done through either the pixel or through the app SDK or through the different sources of events. And you track custom events basically the same way you track normal events. I mean, there is absolutely no difference between the two. By extracting any segment, you mean we can import in audiences to use them in specific campaigns? Yes, that's correct. You can export custom audiences as custom audiences in Ads Manager and use them in any campaign. I remember that you can make custom audiences only from app data and Facebook Analytics. Can we do custom audiences from event source group data? Yes, that is also correct. Yes, you can. Page Insights is showing me a lot of data, but not in analytics. Yeah, that means that you haven't visited your Facebook Analytics dashboard for page. So to do that, you just need to go to facebook.com/analytics/page ID. So if you don't see your page data in the event source group, you definitely need to visit this link. And that way we actually start ingestion the data for your Facebook page to be shown. Is there a possibility to view customer journey by sources from different devices between he converted, for example, how many times he visited the website through AdWords campaign from different devices? Yeah, that's something that you can do actually through funnel analysis. Can I see which ad got the first click on sale? Yeah, so that's definitely an attribution question, and my recommendation is to create different funnels and kind of limit them in time. So the time to completion is the best way to set your attribution. I mean, if you believe that the average completion takes, I don't know, like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, then you just set the time to completion to that and break this down by acquisition source. There's a question about tracking search data. Yeah, you can track search data if you're passing it as parameter or you're passing it as the UTM parameter. Oh, and yeah, there is follow-up. We don't have UTMs, but only GCL ID. Yeah, well, actually, you can track in acquisition source by referrer. So let's say I want page views, edit, I'll go to a parameter, I'll just refer a domain, and usually for Google searches, you refer a domain is, I think it's google.com or google. Whatever country. Yeah, so that's how you can track in data, search data. Can I somehow divide paid and organic traffic data in segments? Yep, you can. You can just select by either install source or UTM parameters, but you can also pass in custom user parameters. So if you are tracking users, like paid users or organically acquired users in your service, you can just pass in that as a user parameter and we'll take care of this. You plan to introduce custom audiences to Ads Manager? Not that I know of. I mean, the only way to create these complex custom audiences is from within Facebook Analytics. Why would I not see post reactions? Again, the answer is you need to start ingesting the page data by visiting it in Facebook Analytics first. Is there any way to exclude the canceled orders on Pixel event? If my assumption is right, canceled orders means users who drop off after filing a purchase event. If that's the case, then yes, you can just pass in another event that can be, let's say, event exclude or include cancel purchase, and this is how you can exclude canceled orders, or sorry, exclude cancel orders. If I manage different ad accounts for different clients in one business manager, will I have all the data for them in one Facebook Analytics? Yeah, I mean, if you're interested in combining pixels, then the business manager needs to have access to those pixels, and effectively, yes, you can combine all that data in one dashboard. How does LTV work? Good question, which is a great segue to audience creation. We've seen that. Let's talk about lifetime value. And sorry, my throat is a bit sore. I'm coming up with a really bad flu. So it's good that we're not doing this face-to-face. So yeah, the lifetime value basically is tracking user activity to purchase, and it's revenue that's generated over time. And again, it kind of looks like another cohort diagram. So it's actually the same one that we made earlier. So if I go back to my dashboard and tracking lifetime value, effectively what this does is it shows me a cohort of users who were newly acquired in certain day, and then their cumulative value over time. And we can either choose all users, and this is going to have basically it's a median of lifetime value between paying users and non-paying users. And if we're only interested in paying users, you can just check this paying users box and look at it here. So basically, this excludes non-paying users LTV. And the way it works is basically we have broken down this by channel. Again, LTV here, purchase event, assumes that the purchase is happening over a pixel event or over an SDK app event, and we just combine them in one interface. Will we ever have another question, will we ever have the ability to see app install source other than from the Facebook family of apps? I mean, short answer is it's probably not. Mostly because that requires like a technical integration with all the other providers. I'm not sure like how likely that will happen, but the good news is you can, again, there are UTM parameters and you can pass in as many as you want and add that to your segment. All right. There is a very, very important question. The event source group X contains a page. Creating custom audiences for page from Facebook Analytics is not yet supported. I believe that's a bug actually that we are, I need to take note of this, that we are currently working on fixing. So if my assumption is right, it's probably for a lot of advertisers, there is this current limitation. So I'll probably, this would probably be fixed within the next 7 days or so. Yeah, that's a really, really good flag. Can we also see time on site and bounce rate in Facebook Analytics? You can actually see session data. So if you're interested in session data, you can just go to the main dashboard, and you'll have median session length and so on. So if you want session data, just go to full report, and it has user activity and then sessions. If you're interested only for web, you just break down by channel, and you just have web here. If we use Google AdWords auto tagging, we are not able to determine the distance from Google campaign because there aren't UTM parameters in FB Analytics, or how could we filter it? Yeah, I think I answered this, but it was from a Google search perspective. Alright, so practically the only way to do it for now is through referrals domains. So if you know the referral domain, and I believe the referral domain for most of Google AdWords campaigns is I think it's doubleclick.com or g.doubleclick.com. So you can just set that up as the referral domain, and you can filter by it. Is there a possibility to create custom audiences, people who like post 30 times but didn't make a purchase? Yes, you can do that. So event include just to post reactions, and event count greater than 30 times, and you add another condition, which is event exclude purchase. Then you create the custom audience from here. Again, probably you'll get the same bug as the other person who asked the question about limitations on creating custom audiences for event source groups who have pages. I'll look into that as soon as possible, and I'll get back to you. Will we ever have ability to see what ad sets are driving the end objective? For example, if I have an ad set that objective is add to cart, and then we target those users for purchase. Yeah, that's actually something that you can do. So let's sure we have time for this. So if I want to install source is Facebook ad, so I can select the campaign. So once I select the campaign, obviously I don't have any real campaign data here, but once you select the campaign, you can select the ad set. So you can break this down. You can break down the segments by campaign and by ad set. You can even go deeper and break it down by ad. So you have total granularity over what actually drives your objective. So if the question is, you're interested in the ad set, that objective is add to cart, and then we target those users for purchase. So once you have the ad set, you can just add condition of event. I don't have add to cart here, but let's assume the event is purchase. You just save this segment, just call it ad set XYZ with the event, and then you just create a custom audience. Yeah, I think that covers pretty much everything that I want to talk about. So yeah, just for the setup, if you don't see your page data, now you just need to go to Facebook Analytics, facebook.com/analytics/ your page ID, and that's how you will be able to start preparing your page data. And probably everyone knows how to get his page ID, but you can just go to your page and select here's my page. Yes, you can just go to your page and go to the about section, and you have your page ID there. Yeah, last thing that I want to ask everyone about is please provide your feedback. Feedback or suggestions, and this is how we can improve the product. There is obviously a lot of work happening now into like how can we make this product the go-to solution for omnichannel analytics. The roadmap, obviously, like I didn't talk about the roadmap in details, but the roadmap is quite simple. Making the product very high performing and integrating it as much as we can to our ads infrastructure. So you get, instead of, for example, like going through hoops and setting up UTM parameters, you would be able to automatically get all your campaigns, either mobile or web or different objectives and so on. And I'm not sure if there are more questions. Let me check. Another question, when I try to create custom audience based on page events such as shares or comments, I get a warning telling me audiences created for page. Yeah, that's actually something that I talked about, and we are working to fix that. Can you select a custom or saved audience for creating segments? Yeah, that's actually what needs to be done. Where do we find the post reactions event that when we add the conditions? Post reaction. So post reaction is under event include post reactions. And then you can add parameters, reaction types you want. Yeah, in real data you'll have here a drop down of all reactions that we support. Do you plan to track FB groups events data as well? Well, good question. I mean, like, here's the thing. It is the product. I mean, like, we started investing in it when it comes to omnichannel only recently, and most probably you'll see much more data, including Facebook group events and other Facebook-owned properties. And I mean, like, that's obviously that's the plan. All right, I think that's all for now. questions. Well, I want to thank you all, or thank the 200 plus people who joined. And yeah, please let me or your Facebook point of contact know that if you have any questions or concerns or feedback regarding this. This is probably the first time that I'm doing a Facebook Analytics webinar. I'll be more than happy to dive deeper into different topics and so on. So yeah, thank you.